Ever given a presentation and felt like it just totally bombed? You know, like you put all this work in, you knew your stuff backwards and forwards, but it just didn't click with anyone. Ugh, hate that feeling, don't you? Well, today we're going to deep dive into what makes communication really work, like what makes it captivating, using what we can glean from some of the best TED Talks out there. What can we learn from these, masters of communication to make our own presentations, pitches, heck, even just everyday conversations better? You know what I mean?
All right.
Right, more engaging, more impactful. All right, let's unpack this. One thing that always stands out to me about great TED speakers is their passion, right? They have this energy that you can't help but get swept up in. Turns out there's some pretty cool science behind all of that energy and passion. Like, did you know that being passionate about something, like really into it, actually changes how our brains work? It's like our brains light up and all that excitement comes out in, well, everything. Our words, our tone, just our whole presence. Think about Mathieu Ricard, that Buddhist monk, the happiest man in the world.
His TED Talk on happiness went crazy viral. And it wasn't because he was saying anything totally new, but because his joy was just so real. You could feel it, even through the screen. And that's what people loved. His passion was contagious. Like, everyone wanted to feel that same joy. And, it's not just about good vibes and everything, right? Passion actually makes us way better at communicating. Researchers at the University of Minnesota and Michigan State, they found that when leaders show positive emotions like passion and enthusiasm, it lifts the mood of the whole audience. And you know what they say? A happy audience is one that's ready to listen. So, if you're about to give a big presentation and you're nervous, try to channel some of that positive energy. Not only will you feel better, but your message will land better too. I remember this one time I had to pitch a new product to these investors, and I was so nervous. Like, my voice was shaky, I was sweating, the whole 9 yards, and I could tell they were just not into it at all. Totally checked out. But then I remembered that thing about passion, so I took a deep breath and tried to focus on what I truly loved about the product.
And I kid you not, the entire vibe of the room changed, like completely. I felt so much more confident, and my voice was stronger, and they actually started asking questions and seemed genuinely interested in what I was saying. It was night and day. Okay, so we know passion is key, but what about those speakers who are amazing storytellers? You know the ones. They weave these narratives that pull you in and make you feel like you're right there with them, living it. Like Brian Stevenson. His TED Talk got the longest standing ovation in TED history. And he spent almost the whole time telling stories about his work with people on death row, and man, it was powerful. There's a reason why stories work so well. This neuroscientist, Uri Hasson at Princeton, did a study where he scanned people's brains while they listened to stories. And get this, he found that when someone's telling a story, the listener's brain actually starts to mirror the speaker's brain activity. It's like their brains are syncing up, creating this connection and a shared experience. So it's not just about the words, It's about how the story makes you feel, the journey it takes you on. Stories that have a lot of emotion, like the one Stevenson told. They break down walls and make people open to what you're saying. He talked about his grandmother, who taught him about justice and compassion, and this janitor who pushed him to keep fighting for what he believed in. And these little personal stories made his arguments about criminal justice reform hit so much harder because they helped the audience relate to him on a human level, I'm not a lawyer or anything, but I remember this one time I was trying to get my team to use this new project management system. And they were not into it at all. Like, they were stuck in their ways, totally resistant to change. So instead of just going on and on about all the great things about the new system, I told them a story about a time when the old system totally failed, which caused this huge project delay. And I described how stressful it was, how frustrated everyone was, those late nights we had to pull just to get back on track. And guess what? By tapping into that feeling, that shared experience of pain and frustration, I was able to connect with them and get them to see why the change was so important. They finally got it. So we've got passion storytelling. But what about just the way someone speaks? Like their pace, their tone, their body language. Do those things really matter? Well, it turns out they totally do. Even small stuff, like how fast you talk, can make a huge difference. Studies actually show that a slightly slower pace than normal conversation, like everyday chatting, helps people take in information better, gives our brains time to really process what we're hearing. It's like, think about when you listen to a podcast, right? I usually bump up the speed to like 1.5x, but sometimes, if it's a super complicated topic or a speaker I'm not used to, I have to slow it down. It's all about finding that sweet spot where you can actually absorb everything, right? And then you've got body language, things like eye contact, using your hands when you talk, all that. Colin Powell was amazing at this. He had this way of just commanding your attention whenever he spoke. Even simple stuff like standing up straight, it can totally change how confident you look. And feeling confident, well, that makes you more convincing, right?
I'll never forget this time. I had to present to the board of directors at my old job. I was a nervous wreck, practically hiding behind the podium. It was so bad.
Now, I always do these like power poses before any big presentation. Stand tall, shoulders back, chin up. Sounds kind of cheesy, but I swear it works. There's this Harvard psychologist, Amy Cuddy, who's done all this research on how power posing can change your hormones, making you feel more confident and less stressed. So yeah, fake it till you make it, right? Especially with body language. So we've got passion, storytelling, the way we present ourselves. But how do you keep people on the edge of their seats? How do you make a presentation not just informative, but like actually fascinating? Well, one biggie is novelty, new stuff. Our brains are wired to crave it. Think about that deep-sea explorer, Robert Ballard. His TED Talk was like a journey to the bottom of the ocean, showing these crazy things most of us had never even seen before. It was mesmerizing. It turns out learning actually triggers a dopamine rush. Yeah, that feel-good chemical. So when a speaker is teaching us something new, it's not just interesting, it's literally rewarding. It's like that aha moment when you finally understand something or you learn something that totally blows your mind. Speaking of aha moments, have you ever seen those presentations where they used like those moving bubbles on a chart to show how the world's changed over time? I saw this Swedish professor, Hans Rosling, do it once, and it was amazing. The way he visualized the data was so cool and insightful, it changed how I thought about things. So it's not just about having new info, it's about how you present it. You got to find a way to surprise and delight your audience. And speaking of surprises, remember when Bill Gates let a bunch of mosquitoes loose during his TED Talk about malaria? Talk about a holy cow moment. It was definitely unforgettable. And guess what? I still remember the point he was making, that malaria is a huge problem we need to do something about. It's like that shocking image just burned his message into my brain. Neuroscientists actually call them emotionally charged events. They create what they call flashbulb memories, and our brains are wired to remember those vivid moments because they're so emotionally powerful. That's what makes something truly stick. You might not remember all the statistics Bill Gates gave, but you'll never forget those mosquitoes. That's the power of a holy smokes moment. Steve Jobs was great at that too, creating these unforgettable moments. The 1984 Macintosh launch, it was pure showmanship. He didn't just talk about the computer, he pulled it out of a bag and made it talk to the audience. Pure genius. It's funny how the things we remember most about presentations aren't the facts and figures, but those little moments of surprise or something that makes us laugh. Like I saw Sir Ken Robinson, the education expert, speak once. He made this joke about how Shakespeare was probably a total pain as a kid, and the audience was dying laughing. Humor's another way to really engage an audience, right? It makes us feel more relaxed and open to what's being said. And the best TED speakers, like Sir Ken, use humor that feels natural. Not like they're telling canned jokes, but more like witty observations or stories we can relate to. Like that friend who always has the perfect one-liner. They don't even have to try. It's just their natural charm. And get this, research actually shows that humor is good for us physically too. Lower blood pressure, stronger immune system. Who knew? So we've covered passion, storytelling, how we present ourselves, novelty, surprise, humor. What else makes these TED Talks so effective? Well, have you noticed, they're always pretty short. There's a reason for that. They're capped at 18 minutes because studies have shown that's the ideal length for keeping people's attention and getting ideas across effectively. Anything longer, and you risk overload. You know what I mean? Our brains can only take in so much at once. It's like a brain workout. Short bursts of intense learning work better than trying to cram everything in at once. I remember this one class I took in grad school. The professor would lecture for 2 hours straight. By the end, my brain was fried. Breaking information down into smaller bite-sized pieces, that's what makes TED Talks work so well. They get to the point and leave you wanting more. So keeping things concise is key, but how do you ensure that information really sticks with people? How do you make it truly memorable? Well, that's where using all your senses comes in. Remember Al Gore's presentation on climate change? It wasn't all just data and graphs. He used visuals and stories to make it real. He showed this time lapse of glaciers melting. It was so sad, but it made the impact of climate change really hit home. Or Lisa Christine, the photographer. She showed these really powerful pictures of modern-day slavery, and her words were so impactful. The combination was unforgettable. Our brains learn best when we engage more than one sense. When we use multiple senses, it creates stronger connections in our brains, which makes us more likely to remember the information. It's like, think about learning a new language. You're more likely to remember a word if you see it, hear it, and say it yourself, right? It's about appealing to the whole person, not just their mind. It's about creating an immersive, engaging experience. But with all these techniques and tips, it's easy to feel like you have to be someone you're not, like trying to be the next Steve Jobs or something. And that's where I think the most important thing comes in. Authenticity. Being genuine. The most compelling speakers are the ones who are just themselves, not trying to fit some mold. They're comfortable with who they are, and that confidence is what draws people in. Think about Sheryl Sandberg. She told this really personal story about her daughter begging her not to leave for a speaking engagement. It was raw and relatable, and it made her point about work-life balance all the more powerful. Or Richard Branson. He's the same guy whether he's launching a new airline or, like, kite surfing with models. He owns his thing, and that's what makes him so interesting. Authenticity is key. When we're true to ourselves, our passion shines through, and our stories resonate more. People can spot a fake a mile away. So the best advice is just to be yourself, but be the best version of yourself. And, it's not even about being perfect. Remember Steve Jobs' first TV interview? He was a mess. He thought he was going to be sick. It's actually kind of inspiring to see how far he came with practice and just sticking with it. He wasn't always the smooth, charismatic guy we remember. It's a good reminder that we're all capable of growth. It's just about embracing the journey and not being afraid to mess up along the way. So we've covered a lot here. Passion, storytelling, how we present ourselves, novelty, surprise, humor, being concise, using all the senses, authenticity, and practice, practice, practice. But if you had to boil it all down to one thing, the one ingredient that makes communication truly captivating, what would it be? That's a tough one. But I think really it all comes down to connection. It's about creating that bridge between you, the speaker, and whoever you're talking to, building understanding and hopefully leaving a lasting impression. It's like you said before, connection, right? Because at the end of the day, isn't that what we all want? To feel seen, heard, understood. And when we connect with someone on that level, it opens up our minds, It touches our hearts and gets us fired up to actually do something. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to walk away with? Believe in the power of your own voice. We all have stories, ideas, unique perspectives to share with the world. Don't be afraid to just be yourself. Embrace that and let your inner awesome communicator shine through. Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll leave you to think about your own journey with communication and how to make it captivating. Go out there, connect with your audience, and let your voice be heard.